My name is Arthur Harrison. I am 65 years old, and I spent 30 years as a Superior Court judge in Los Angeles. At my son-in-law's promotion party, in front of nearly 200 guests, I watched him slap my daughter across the face and call her a freeloader. The ballroom went silent. My daughter stood frozen. Too shocked to move, I walked onto that stage, handed him a sealed envelope, looked him in the eye, and smiled. Then I took off my jacket, wrapped it around my daughter's shoulders, and walked her out. 1 hour later, the FBI stormed the building. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back 3 months, to a January morning when I woke up to a silence I didn't yet understand. The silence that comes right before your whole life quietly rearranges itself. The house still smelled faintly of Margaret's old watercolors and lemon oil. Even years after she'd passed, the particular scent of dark wood paneling that had held 30 years of our marriage. I'd sat on the bench of the Los Angeles Superior Court for 3 decades, sentenced fraud networks without flinching, and they'd called me the granite judge because nothing rattled me. A stroke that November had rewritten, that my right hand trembled now, a fine, persistent shake no therapy had resolved. My daughter Clara, 32, a 4th grade teacher with her mother's laugh, called every single morning at 7:15 without exception. Evelyn, my wife of 5 years, brought me a bitter green herbal mixture each morning. Vitamins for stroke recovery, she said. Researched carefully, I noticed a faint metallic taste underneath the herbs and dismissed it as nothing. Clara's husband, Julian Mercer, was 38, always precisely on time, dressed in suits that cost more than most people's rent. In 30 years on the bench, I'd learned that men who arrive exactly on time have usually rehearsed everything that follows when I mentioned wanting to move somewhere with easier access. Evelyn suggested Julian handle it. He's family, Arthur. Let him help. Something moved through me then. Not alarm exactly. The faint sound of a door opening somewhere I couldn't yet see. I wrote Julian a check for $180,000 for the escrow deposit on a ground-floor apartment near Cedars Sinai. My right hand trembled as I signed it, the way it trembled on everything now. He promised a full paper trail. He tucked the check into his jacket and left. 3 days later, I called him. It rang through to voicemail. By the 3rd week of February, I had called him 21 times, 14 voicemails, 0 callbacks. Every excuse arrived secondhand, through Evelyn, delivered warm and unhurried, at the breakfast table. Escrow negotiations, documentation issues, bank backlogs. The stroke makes you anxious. Arthur, she said one morning, patting my hand, don't let it turn you against your own family. That's the word they'd started using for everything that used to be trust. I remember thinking, RECALIBRATING. My old courtroom clerk, Maggie Carson, called that evening and told me flatly that under California law, an escrow holder must confirm receipt of funds within 72 hours. Not a courtesy, a requirement. The next morning, I called my bank myself. The check had cleared into Julian's personal account, not escrow, not a title company. His account 2 days after I'd signed it. That night, a text arrived from an unknown number. Judge Harrison, Be careful who you trust inside that house. -D.I. Did not sleep. I opened Julian's Instagram and found a new post. A silver Porsche Panamera. Dealer plates still on. His caption reading, "Hard work. Pays off. Close the deal of the year." I picked up my cane, drove myself to Beverly Hills, and started asking questions. The salesman at the dealership confirmed it without hesitation once I identified myself as a retired judge investigating a fraud complaint. Julian had paid cash for the Panamera, $140,000. 3 days after my check cleared, I called Maggie back. That afternoon, she didn't just listen. She went to work. Within a week, using her notary contacts and old courthouse relationships, she'd pulled records, all of them managed through a trusted family member who softened every excuse. I texted the unknown number, D, and asked who they were. The reply came back within the hour. Dennis Ruiz, FBI. Financial crimes. I've been building a case on Julian Mercer for 8 months. Your check is the largest piece of evidence we have. We met in a parking structure 2 blocks from my house. Dennis was younger than I expected. Careful, precise, the way good investigators always are. He laid it out. Julian had been running an affinity fraud scheme for years, targeting elderly clients through family connections, and Evelyn's herbal supplements were being tested by his team for reasons he wouldn't yet explain, only that I should stop drinking them immediately. I did not tell Clara. I did not tell Evelyn. I went home that night, poured the green mixture down the sink, and refilled the glass with water. Before anyone noticed, I texted Dennis 2 words before bed. I'm in. Dennis explained it in plain terms over the following weeks. The FBI needed one more piece, a live transaction, on record, tied to a public event, so they could execute a coordinated arrest with minimal risk to Clara Julian's company promotion party. 3 weeks away was the opportunity. I would deliver a sealed envelope on stage in front of witnesses containing a marked check that would trigger the final financial trail the moment he tried to deposit it. Evelyn, in the meantime, grew warmer than usual, suggesting we simplify things. Perhaps I should sign a general power of attorney, just to make appointments and paperwork easier during my recovery. A fake kindness wrapped around a request I now understood completely. I'll think about it, I told her, and gave nothing else away. Clara called one evening, her voice thin. Dad, is something wrong between you and Julian? He seems different lately. Careful. Almost, she'd noticed. Without knowing why, the night before the party, I sat alone in Margaret's old reading chair, the watercolor of the California coast on the wall beside me. I wish this were different. I wish Evelyn had married me for the reasons I believed, instead of for what she thought I couldn't protect. I wish Julian had loved my daughter the way he performed loving her in front of a room. But wishes don't build a case. Evidence does. I cried quietly in that chair, not from weakness, from finally seeing the whole shape of what had been done to my family. It was 11:50 p.m., the night before the party. The house was silent, the way houses go silent once you've stopped trusting the people asleep inside them. I sat in my study with one lamp on, a video call open to Dennis and the federal prosecutor assigned to the case. We went through the plan one final time. The marked envelope. The surveillance team positioned outside the venue. The signal I'd give once the envelope was delivered. "You're doing the right thing, Judge Harrison," Dennis said. "For Clara. For every other family he's done this to. For yourself." I signed the final authorization at 12:03 a.m. 12:03 a.m. I am 65 years old. I sat on that bench for 30 years, handing down verdicts to men exactly like him. Tomorrow, I hand down one more. Across town, Julian was almost certainly asleep beside my daughter, confident that a trembling old man in a wheelchair-adjacent recovery was no threat to anything he'd built. He'd learn otherwise within 24 hours. The promotion party filled a downtown ballroom with nearly 200 guests, colleagues, clients, the polished version of Julian's world. He gave a speech about hard work and vision then. Pulling Clara aside near the stage, loud enough for the room to catch it, he called her a freeloader and slapped her across the face. The room went silent. Clara stood frozen. I walked onto that stage with my cane, the tremor in my hand steady enough for what I needed to do, and handed him the sealed envelope. He opened it in front of everyone, a marked cashier's check, made out exactly like the one that had disappeared into his account months earlier. Confusion first, then recognition, then the stillness of a man realizing the room he controlled had already been surrendered. He looked at me like I was still the frail old man he'd photographed himself past. I wasn't. I hadn't been for weeks. I took off my jacket, wrapped it around my daughter's shoulders, and walked her out of that ballroom without another word. 1 hour later, federal agents walked in and arrested him, in front of everyone who had just watched him hit his wife. Margaret used to say, "A courtroom teaches you that patience and evidence beat anger every time." I always thought she meant my job. She meant my whole life. Julian is currently awaiting federal trial on multiple counts of wire fraud and elder financial abuse, with at least 4 other victims. Confirmed Evelyn moved out within the week. Her supplements, it turned out, contained a mild sedative, enough to keep me compliant, not enough to raise alarm. At a routine checkup, Dennis still calls. Occasionally, mostly just to check in, Clara moved back into Margaret's old room while her divorce finalizes, and some mornings I hear her laughing in the kitchen, the way she used to before any of this began. Does for me. I still sit in Margaret's chair beneath her watercolor of the California coast, and some evenings my hand doesn't shake at all. If you've ever had to stay calm in the moment you most wanted to break, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe to Dad's Revenge Tales. There are more to come.